I don't think we should be a brain-draining society. We're hogging talent from third world that is desperately needed, engineering talent, scientific talent, medical skills, nursing skills, while we neglect tens of millions of people in terms of not giving them adequate training, education, opportunities. And you know, when you start draining that kind of skill from continents like Africa, a lot of serious harm occurs. And we ought to be a little bit more, shall we say, humanitarian oriented and say, let's develop our own here and not try to, in effect, cream off the crop, including entrepreneurial skilled people that are needed back there just to get the thing going. I mean, Africa is exporting nurses and we're importing doctors. We can't train enough here. So I'm against this kind of visa. It's amazing how many people write in the New York Times, like Tom Friedman and so on. We got to keep these. Give them green cards. Give them visas. They got it at Rensselaer or MIT. Don't let them go back home. Well, it's back home where they're needed. And maybe if we supported democracies in a much more thorough sense, they could get more done if we didn't prop up dictatorships as we have over the years. So in that sense, I'm very much against that kind of brain drain. I mean, it ought to be a subject. There's a lot of people get resentful. Younger people get resentful when they don't have the chance, but someone coming in and getting a degree gets their job.
I disagree with that completely.
Of course.
I mean, apart from anything that's completely out of date, you know, the fact that you refer to the third world as a giveaway, this phenomenon is much less true today because of the dramatic growth rates that we now see in sub-Saharan Africa as well as in many parts of the developing world. It's not a brain drain. Now, let me be clear. I have some skin in the game here. I am an immigrant. And I'm actually trying to get my green card. So I have a certain interest in this debate. But leaving that aside, I see very clearly benefits for both the United States and the developing world from the free flow of talent across borders. And the United States shot itself in both feet with both barrels in the way that it changed its immigration rules. The Canadians have been behaving in an altogether smarter way, and they're not alone in this. All over the world, there is a competition for talent. And there's a competition to build the most effective hubs and the most effective networks. That's the essence of globalization. Look at this room. Look at the people in this room. And you'll see the results of this fantastic experiment in the free mobility of talent. Come on, Rolf. This is 2012. Look at the people. Look at the physiognomies in this room.
Yeah,
if your policy had been adopted throughout the period from the 1920s, when it was instituted until now, we would be looking at a completely different kind of group of people here.
We have to
Thank
develop.
goodness we didn't listen to people like you.
Countries
Thank
have to
goodness
develop
we took
their
down
own
the
talent.
barriers to immigration.
Public works aren't being built in these countries. They don't have civil engineers. People are dying because they have one doctor for every 200,000 people or 100,000 people. They're in New York. Half of the doctors in Manhattan are from abroad. Why can't we produce our own doctors and have these other doctors build their own country?
People come here for training that they can't get in these countries.
Let me bring Charles in.
I'm listening to this stuff.
In terms of my views of immigration policy, I think a country should control its own border. I have a lot of problems with illegal immigration, uncontrolled illegal immigration. Otherwise, immigration has been the lifeblood of the American project.
Here.
Continues to be that. It provides the infusion of energy and idealism. I tell you, I hang out with a lot of people who are new immigrants from a lot of different countries in a context I won't go into at this point, but I spend a lot of time with them. They are the most American Americans I know, and God bless, I want all of them I can get.
I just have to chime in here, a little editorial comment. Recently I was asked to officiate over one of these, citizenship events where people who become American citizens from countries, as they say, from Albania to Zambia, have undergone what it takes to become American citizens. And it's one of the most moving and poignant events I've ever participated in, because these people really want to be Americans and they feel an extraordinary patriotism about being Americans. Louis, you were going to add something here about just this vexing question of immigration, how it fits into the whole picture.
No, I was talking about the illegal immigrants. If I mean, they're being imported for our, use as a cheap labor. And if we find their employers, they would suddenly, many jobs would be available to Americans and you'd also raise the minimum wage.
But we're talking about legal immigrants here.
No, I was talking about
And
illegal.
there's one more thing I'd like to add on this subject, because Ralph wants to stop Africans coming to the United States. My wife just happens to have been born in Africa. In fact, she was born in Somalia. The only place in the world, it turns out, where she can enjoy the real freedom to speak and write as she wishes is the United States.
That includes,
She would
that
not
includes
be,
Holland, right?
including Holland.
Yeah, because she
She
lived
was
in Holland.
she certainly wouldn't be safe in Somalia, Ralph. It turned out she wasn't even safe in the Netherlands, where the freedom to speak turns out to be restricted to saying politically correct things only. She has come here, is going to become an American citizen, I hope, this year. And she, to me, is the single best argument in support of Charles's point. This is the key to America. This freedom to bring people to freedom is the key.
Don't
I
put
can't
words-
sit here
wait.
and I can't sit here and listen to you
Listen,
argue
don't-
that Africans should be kept in Africa for their own good. When I think of
don't
her story,
put words in my mouth.
well,
put words in
you
your mouth.
sounded like immigration
No,
control was
listen
what
to me
you
carefully. You're
favored.
difficult in detecting nuances. That's your problem. We're not saying there shouldn't be any
So what-
immigration.
so what is
there
your
will always be immigration. But an aggressive program to draw people that are desperately needed in their country is hoggish. We have to have some self-restraint when we have tens of millions of people we're not training here so they can have their opportunities. Let me give you an example. Isn't it nice that Muhammad Yunus wasn't brought here on a visa to stay here? Instead, he built the whole microcredit movement, which is spreading in more countries, starting with Bangladesh, and had jobs for thousands, and if not hundreds of thousands of women in villages. Isn't it nice that Hatan Fathi, who was called the people's architect in Egypt, wasn't here building skyscrapers? He was teaching Egyptian peasants how to build elegant little houses from the soil under their feet. Aren't we happy that Paulo Freire didn't come here and stayed in Brazil and developed these incredible literacy programs in terms of accelerated literacy for illiterate peasants?
Yeah, it's
We're
too
not
bad.
talking about you try to win arguments by taking your opponent's extreme to absurd positions.
don't have to
That
with
is
you.
that is a dishonest treatment. And this is what creates class warfare. It's resentment. It's sense of injustice. It's denial of opportunity. We ought to get over it. There are people dying in the third world because the doctors aren't there. And if we didn't support the dictatorships, and as we did, in the Cold War and everything, as long as they were anti-communist, we supported Saddam Hussein. He was our great ally.
But you know, Ralph, it's not so accidental that we come to this impasse toward right near the end of things.
Yeah, but we got to be clear here.
Well, no, because I'll tell you why.
But you're not
I
being
mean,
clear.
when
You're not being
people
clear,
cheer
because
when
you
they
take
hear
a couple-
immigration,
you cite
excuse me
a
just a
couple of
second, Neil. People
exceptions.
cheer when they hear immigration helps build a country, because it does. But then you'll also hear Americans cheering, because I've heard this, when you talk about immigrants who come here and live off the dole and do the sorts of things that essentially take entitlements or game the system or whatever. I mean, like Americans in general, we're talking about a heterogeneous population. It's something that can be argued either way. And when we're talking about class warfare, we're often talking about just a subject of this sort, seems to me. And the fact that we're at an impasse, I think, is all
It's
too
not,
indicative.
but it isn't an impasse, really. To take Muhammad Yunus and try to win the argument with a couple of examples, let's not stop there. It's too bad that the president's father wasn't kept in Kenya. It's too bad, right, that Steve Jobs' father wasn't kept in Syria. Think of all the people who have transformed not just America, but the global economy, because they were able to come here. They were able to escape from the failed states where they were born. They were able to study, and they were able to bring their talent to somewhere where it could be used. I can't really yield in an argument like this, because it is so clear that you are wrong.
No,
Let's just get it on the record.
You're
You did
bur-
not-
you're
you did not leave
burlesquing-
Scotland for any
you
reasons
are
that had to do with it.
burlesquing the
Yeah.
argument, Neil, and you know it. We're all immigrants. It's just the lack of self-restraint. The aggressive brain drain is outrageous when you have people here who are being neglected and not being given the opportunity.
I wish
So
there
don't
were,
drive it to
there
an
were an
extreme.
aggressive brain drain. I wish I could say the United States is systematically trying to attract the brightest people to this country and retain them. If only that were true, because it's not doing those.